Should we start then? Yes, Zahra, are you there?
Yes. Hi, Rahul. Yes, I'm here.
Oh my God. Okay, so late in the night for you already. And then Tony and Erin are also on.
I'm here.
Likely. Okay, great. So as I was mentioning earlier, so Zahra is doing a PhD on the computer engineering program. So the rules are slightly different, I'm told. There is no separate written comprehensive. So it's essentially the proposal, right, written form, plus all the questions that you have during this would count towards both the proposal and the comprehensive. And then I have the single form that needs to be signed by us with the decisions at the end. And then we talk about that. And then as far as the signatures are concerned, Zahra will send it around by DocuSign or it'll be.
Yeah.
Okay. So unless there are other questions, I think we just go ahead and start the presentation, proposal presentation. So Zahra is going to be talking about her PhD thesis proposal on computational accounts of trust in human AI interaction. As I said, I'm chairing and Erin Chow and Tony Yang and Siddharth Srivastava.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Yeah, the title of my proposal is Computational Accounts of Trust in Human AI Interaction, and thank you for being here for my talk.
Speak louder.
So as AI become more present in our day-to-day life, we start to see kind of significant impact it has on different range of practical tasks like finance, robotic, healthcare, and education, etc. However, to fully leverage the benefit of AI and foster its integration, we need to establish trust between human and AI. Without AI, we can say the true potential of, without trust, we can say the true potential of AI may remain untapped, and it can result in hindering the acceptance, adoption, and overall effectiveness of these systems. While AI needs to engender trust in the human in the loop, we can say the appropriate level of trust is a complex task that kind of needs a balance. Because we know both over-trust and under-trust may result in catastrophic events. Two kind of famous example of this is two airplane crash that happened because of over-trust and under-trust, one on this automation system. Moreover, the dynamic between human and AI also needs attention, because establishing trust requires understanding of each other's roles and capabilities. So AI needs to understand human model and their expectation and correct them if it is necessary. So this highlights the importance of having trust-aware frameworks that can engender long-lasting trust in the human, especially a generalized and consistent framework and formalization that can understand, estimate, and foster an appropriate level of trust. Trust has been studied by different researchers in different directions. I can say the two important directions of study in trust in human AI interaction is, one is psychological and human factor view, and the other is computational accounts of trust. Psychologists and human factor researchers define trust in many different ways. That some of them might be consistent, some of them might diverge. For example, trust is considered as attitude or expectation. I put one example of each under that. And trust also might be considered intention or willingness to act, or some people consider it as an outcome of a behavior. Among all these definitions, one definition that stands out and mostly accepted by many researchers is the definition of trust by Reliance, that trust is the attitude that an agent will help achieve an individual's goal, in a situation characterized by uncertainty and vulnerability. So we can see that because trust is considered as an attitude, it is information-based, so they consider trust has 3 dimensions. Information about process, purpose, and performance. Purpose is about why AI is developed and whether the agent has a positive orientation toward the human. And process is about how AI operates and shows the quality of action based on human expectation. And performance is about what AI does, and it implies competency, proficiency in achieving the goal. Moreover, vulnerability and uncertainty is 2 other aspects of trust that is common in many trust definitions. More specifically, it is considered as 2 characteristics of trust, where vulnerability arises because of user dependent on the AI system's capability and acceptance, and anticipation is related to users' ability to anticipate the impact of AI models, decision, and expectation about future that it forms or shape trust. Apart from this, different quantifying and measure of trust has been done that consider trust based on different factors like reliability, predictability, faith, competency, and I will not go into the detail of all of them, but they are also aligned with 3 dimensions of trust as well. The measures that like the human factors view and psychological view are mostly qualitative. And on the other hand, there are line of works that is about computational accounts of trust. Computational accounts of the trust can be categorized in 3 categories. Trust inference, which is about leveraging observed human behavior to predict trust levels. Trust utilization, which is about using the estimated trust to guide and optimize robot behavior, and trust calibration, which deals with adjustment and restoration of trust. There are many works on each of these that you can check my proposal for more detail of the works. While we saw that human factors view of trust were kind of provide insight into how individuals perceive, develop, and maintain trust, and they have a more qualitative exploration of trust that help in shaping AI systems that align more closely with human expectation. They were mostly qualitative. On the other hand, computational models of research on computational models of trust consider trust from a more technical perspective and utilize algorithm and data-driven method and quantify trust based on observed behavior and different performance metrics. We could see that in computational model of trust, vulnerability aspects or characteristic of trust were inherent, and anticipation characteristics was helping in developing developing these models and adaptation of these models. However, I can say that trust in these models mostly considered as a reliability of the system. When it is considered as a reliability of system, it is more connected to the performance dimension of trust, which means that it is they are considered just 1 dimension of trust. So it can kind of make a gap between these 2 directions and kind of mismatch, because they might adopt some of the qualitative measures from human factors research, while they are mostly considered 1 dimension. So this brings a gap or mismatch between these 2 directions. So in my research direction, I'm proposing a generalized and consistent mental model-based formalization of trust that can be a foundation for understanding, estimating, and fostering an appropriate level of trust, and it can also capture the multi-dimension of trust and bridge the gap. Moreover, I will use this mental model-based framework of trust as a foundation to develop different decision-making framework of trust to guide both single and longitudinal interaction. And we can also use this mental model-based framework of trust to utilize it in trust inference. This is the agenda of my talk. I will first talk about mental model-based framework of trust. I will talk what is the interaction setting in this work, and what trust means in this framework, and then how 3-dimension of trust is connected to this framework. And then using this framework as a foundation, we can develop different decision-making framework. I will first talk about single interaction, and it's going toward iterated interaction or longitudinal interaction between human and robots or AI. As ongoing and proposed work, I will try to operationalize this framework in modeling trust evolution and formalize appropriate level of trust and model human reliance, and evaluate how this framework can be used for inferring trust. So in our work, we are considering a basic interaction between human and AI, which here is a sequential decision making, which can be a robot, where the robot is responsible to doing a task, and the human is the supervisor of the robot and is responsible to monitor the robot and make sure that the robot does this task right, as well as intervening if it is necessary. And so there is when in their interaction we have three set of models. One is model of the robot or model of the agent. The other is the set of humans model of the agent, which is about human belief about a model of the robot. And this set can be an empty set or can be multiple it can have multiple models with different likelihood that human thinks these models might be human robots model. And the other is a model of the human model of the task, which or M*H, which captures the human expectation and desired way to do the task. When I'm talking about model, the model can be any formal model that captures an agent's belief about task objectives, a state of the world, how the world might evolve on its own or in response to the agent's action. And examples of the model can be MDP models, POMDP, or symbolic model like PDDL-based models. For example, if we consider a strip style model, we can consider model consists of D, I, G, where D is the domain of the model, I is the initial condition, and G is the goal. D consists of booleans and actions. And a plan in this model, in such model, is a sequence of actions that, given the initial condition, it can lead to the goal if it is executable. And then the cost of the plan is the summation over cost of each of these actions if it is executable. Otherwise, it will be infinity. And we also can consider likelihood of a plan given a model as in this form, where there might be different options for choosing this likelihood. One of these, which is common, is to have to use a Boltzmann distribution over the cost for the likelihood of a plan in a specific model. Now that we have the interaction setting at hand, we can see what trust means in this setting. So trust as a measure is best understood in terms of one's expectation on an agent to satisfy expectation on an agent that they can satisfy a specific contract. And this contract can be an agent's behavior meeting some specific performance guarantee. And this contract is extracted from M*H, human model of the task. So in that case, we can say trust the robot puts on the agent is proportional to the function of a likelihood that the robot can human believe that the robot will achieve the contract or satisfy the contract. Where the likelihood that a human believe that the robot will achieve the contract is the summation over the likelihood for each of the models in the set of human models of the robot that in that model will achieve the contract, multiply to the probability of that model in that set. And now we can see how the 3 dimension of trust is connected to our framework. So as we saw that trust is connected to the mental models, then the trust that human put on the robot is linked to their interplay between their mental models like M star H and set of MRH. So if we consider because the human trust, it is all about these 2 models and how they are updating. So if we consider one model in MRH as MRH in this form, then domain of this model captures the robot capabilities, which is connected to the performance dimension of trust, and goal, which consists of internal robot goal and human requested goal, is related to the purpose dimension of trust. And as I told you about the probability or likelihood of a plan given a model, we also can have the likelihood that the optimal plan in that specific model is expected by human, as the Boltzmann distribution over the distance between the cost of expected plan by the human and cost difference between expected plan by the human and the optimal plan in that specific model, which shows how close a robot plan is to the plan expected by human, which is connected to the process dimension of trust. Now, given this framework, we can now go into detail how we develop different decision-making framework that use this as a foundation and as a foundation. So first, we start with a single interaction. In a single interaction, we can say when there is no prior interaction between human and the AI, there will be no warranted trust. So the human might not actually have a warranted trust that has a base on the robot or agent. So the human has to always monitor the robot in order to make sure that the robot is doing based on their expectation. However, always monitoring the robot is caustic. So on the other hand, robots' behavior might also deviate from humans' expectation. For example, the robot might have side goals, for example, that might not be aligned with the human expectations, such as autonomous car ride sharing or any robot as a service, that the supervisor of that agent has some specific expectation, like going the shortest route, and the passenger might have other goals, such as taking the safer path or doing less traffic path or something like this. That might be in conflict. The other thing might be because the robot might not be aware of the human's exact model. For example, in this mental model setting, we can say human might have a set of model of the robot, that some of these models in this set might be aligned with M star H and some might not be aligned with M star H. And so if the robot doesn't know about M star H but knows about the set of the human model of the robot, then they might not know according to what supervisor is observed, like monitoring them, and what is their expectation, whether and which of the models in this set are aligned with M star H. So it might be all of them, or it might be some of them in that set that is aligned. In that case, the robot, in order to be act according to human expectation, they have to find a plan that is executable in all of the models in this set of human model of the robot. However, finding that plan will be very costly, and executing it will be very costly because it has to consider all the restriction or constraint of each of these models. On the other hand, the robot might be able to find a model plan that is optimal for them and executable in some of these models, but not all of them. So this shows that if the robot deviates, the robot has a motivation to deviate, and if the human doesn't monitor the robot all the time, then the robot will choose the less costly plan, which might be unsafe or might be considered unsafe, inexplicable for the human. Then the human, in order to make sure that the robot does something that they are expected, they have to monitor all the time, which is costly. So a monitoring strategy for human is needed to save their resources and ensure the safe behavior from the robot to achieve the goal. So for this, we have a game theoretic model of trust that can capture this interaction, and we propose a trust boundary that is the resource efficient monitoring strategy for human in the absence of trust. And they can, by following that, they can make sure that the robot will do a safe plan. For example, in this robot delivery example, the robot task is to bring coffee and parcel, which are electric devices, to the employee. And the robot, by solving this, we can come up with two plans. Pi-S, which is, and I will explain about the detail of them, and Pi-PR. Pi-S is for the robot to go to the kitchen, take the coffee, bring it to the employee, and go to the reception, take the parcel and bring it to the employee. While Pi-PR is to bring the coffee and parcel at the same time in a tray to the employee, which might be risky because the coffee might spill on the parcel or electric device and ruin it. So we can say Pi-PR is optimal in robot model. However, this might be risky in some of human models, while the other one can be considered safe in all human models. So we model this in a game theoretic setting that is a Bayesian game because of the uncertainty human robot has about the human. I will not go to the detail of the game and what are each of the costs or these things. You can check in the proposal for more detail. But what I can explain is that in this game we consider three levels of human monitoring. One is the human monitor the plan but not the execution. The other is not monitoring the plan but the execution, and the other is not monitoring the robot at all. And there is two also plan for the robot: probable risk plan and safe plan. And then we can see from left to right if the human choose that, it means more trust or accepting more vulnerability. However, the human might not have trust on the robot because there's no prior interaction between them. So then using this game theoretic setting, we can find the optimized monitoring strategy for the human, where it is a fraction that human can choose to monitor or not monitor the robot while ensuring that the robot will stick to the safe plan. For this, the expected utility of the robot for the safe plan under human monitoring strategy should always be more than the expected utility of the probable risk plan under that strategy. By solving this, we can have an optimal monitoring strategy for the human that if they follow, it will result, they can optimize their monitoring strategy and save their resources, and ensuring that the robot will stick to the safe plan because the expected utility of that will be always higher. To evaluate this work, we did two human subject study to answer to two questions. Do we really need this service? And the other is, does this service help? More specifically, we have three hypotheses. First is that human monitoring strategy are inferior to the optimal monitoring strategy, and human deviate from continuous monitoring, which might lead to the unsafe plan, and providing human with the optimal monitoring strategy improve their monitoring approach. And first and second hypothesis answer to the first question, and first and third hypothesis answer to the second question. We did 2 human subject study in robot delivery domain that participants have multiple round of interaction that they need to like monitor the robot or not monitoring the robot. I have not go into the detail. In the first study, we asked them to give us the monitoring strategy, and at each round they want to follow to monitor the robot. And the second study was about, we compare 2 cases of a study, one that the ones that we gave them the optimal monitoring strategy, the other was the one that they have to come up with the optimal monitoring strategy by themselves. And given the results, we saw that we validate our hypothesis with different statistical tests. We saw that hypothesis 1 is validated because the difference in the distribution of human selected strategy and the optimal strategy were significantly different in the last round. And we also saw that human and most of the human have more variance in changing their monitoring strategy in each round, which shows that they deviate from always monitoring the robot. In the study 2, we compared the number of monitoring steps selected by participants in each round, and we also validate hypothesis 1 and hypothesis 3, where we saw that the control case where there is no, we didn't give any monitoring strategy to the participant, were significantly different from the optimal case, optimal monitoring strategy. And we also compared treatment and control case, where we saw that they are significantly different. And we saw when we give the participant the optimal monitoring strategy, they will follow it, and it will improve their monitoring strategy. So now we saw in the single interaction that how trust and monitoring can be connected. So we can say that not monitoring the robot means that accepting the risk and vulnerability. So we can use this to operationalize this relationship between trust and monitoring, which might be useful in many decision-making frameworks like the one that I will explain after this. And it can also help in avoiding automation bias and complacency, which are the result of overtrust or undertrust. In this approach, we did a human subject study to collect data, and then we evaluate the interplay between these 2 variables and fit 2 different models that captures this interplay, that we can predict one variable based on the other. We did a human subject study with 62 participants in office domain, where the robot has different tasks to do, like going to the red point, bringing coffee to the different rooms, and human and robot has 10 round of interaction, and human in each round of interaction could choose to monitor the robot or do another extra task, which gave them extra score. And at the end of each round, we measured their trust based on a mere questionnaire. And by this, we collect their monitoring choices as well as their trust measure. We saw that with higher trust, more people chose not to monitor the robot, and with the point by serial correlation test that we did, we showed that trust and monitoring has negative correlation with which is statistically significant. And we fit 2 models into this, one continuous model, the other is a discrete model, where given different trust value or trust level, we can predict what is the likelihood that human monitor the robot. This brings us to the iterated interaction or longitudinal interaction. In the longitudinal interaction between human and robot, we can say the robot actually can engender trust in the human. And if robot optimal behavior or the behavior that they are doing achieve the goal and it's what human expect, it can be easily engendered over some interaction. However, the challenge comes when the human has different model of the robot and than the robot. So in that case, the optimal plan for the robot might not be explicable to the human. So in order to like engender trust in human, the robot has to behave according to the human expectation, which is explicable plan or give explanation or different kind of behavior that match with human expectation, while it might be costly. So a trade-off, especially over large interaction between human and robot, it will affect the cost or performance of the team if the robot has to always choose the costly plan. So a trade-off is needed for expensive but trust engendered behavior and the efficient and possibly surprising behavior. The approach that we take is to have a meta computational framework that robot can use to model and work with human trust, and taking the longitudinal view of teaming to choose to be optimal, explicable, or explain, and in order to engender trust and at the same time optimize the team performance and the costs. For example, the difference between when the robot model and human model might be different is an example for this. In this example, the robot task is to go to the red point. So human thinks there is rubble in 1, 2, 3. So the optimal plan for human is pi 1, while there is actually no rubble in 1, 2, 3. So the optimal plan for the robot is pi 2. However, the robot, in order to be comprehensible or explicable to the human, they can either choose to do pi 1, which is explicable for human, or it can give explanation and then that by saying there is no rubble in 1, there is no rubble in 2, and there is no rubble in 3, and then do pi 2 because the human model will be updated. And this is a behavior that because it's according to human expectation can engender trust. However, there are other possibilities for the robot. One is to do optimal plan in their model, which is not explicable for the human, which might also ruin trust, and the other is balanced plan, which give partial explanation. For example, by saying there is no rubble in 1, then in that case, pi 2 will still be not explicable, but it will be less inexplicable. So in this, we have a computational model for capturing and modulating trust in longitudinal interaction, where the robot integrates trust and human expectation into consideration for the whole interaction they have. In a way that we have the reasoning about trust level model as a meta reasoning process over individual tasks. So when, let's say, they have multiple interaction, and at the beginning, when the trust is low, the robot will can focus more on engendering trust in human, and then when the trust is higher, they can more focus on the like optimizing team cost and team performance. For the formulation, we have two level formulation: base level, which is about each of the sequence of the tasks that the robot needs to do, and each of these problems is formulated as a human aware planning problem, in which we have a robot's model and human model of the robot, and solving this will we can have 3 plan: balanced plan, explicable plan, and optimal plan, and that I explained about. And then the degree that a plan meets the user expectation we consider as a explicability score, which is the distance between current plan and expected plan. And then in the meta level, which is a meta MD problem, we capture the longitudinal reasoning process, and each of the task or problems in the base level will be a state of a state in this meta level, and trust level of the human will be a state, part of the state space. And the action space is the strategies that we have in the meta, in the base level problem, and the transitions. The transition function is based on robots behavior, human monitoring strategy, and explicability score. And the cost also is based on full execution cost and executing the plan under monitoring, which might be related to the monitoring and whether the human monitor the robot or whether they intervene. And we also use the model that I introduced in the previous part. In order to evaluate our work, we did a human subject study on the office domain with 79 participants. In this work, we compared our trust-aware method with 3 baseline when the robots always do explicable in each of the problems, sequence of the problems, and when the robot always do optimal, and when the robot chose a random policy. Specifically, we have 3 hypotheses. One is that team performance in trust-aware is better than always explicable case, and engender trust is better in trust-aware than random policy and always optimal case. We did different t-tests and mixed ANOVA tests to validate our hypothesis. We saw that all of our hypotheses are validated with significant results. And then we saw that our trust-aware method is better in terms of trust evolution, engendering trust and team performance, especially the trade-off between these two comparing to the baseline. For the ongoing work, we are going to use, again, the mental model-based framework that I will explain. So we saw that in the works that I did, like in developing different decision-making frameworks, we saw that our mental models kind of captures the structure of our formulation. However, we can say measuring trust is not usually practically visible in many scenarios. So we need to also have a way to infer trust. So in here, I'm trying to use the mental model-based framework to also infer trust, as well as using this for modeling like appropriate level of trust, trust evolution, and human reliability that is more connected to this framework. And using different human study, I will evaluate more about how is our trust-aware mental model-based trust framework ability in inferring trust changes in human. As a reminder, in this framework, we consider trust to be proportional to the likelihood that human thinks robot will satisfy the contract. So we can actually then model trust evolution by because with new agents behavior or information given to the human, we can say the human will start updating their posterior or their belief about the model of the agents. So in that case, it can result in updating different part of MRH in the set of model, or different, even it can result in updating MSRH. And this can also relate to different level of trust, dimension of trust. When, for example, it's the robot behavior or information updates the domain of each of the model, it will result in updating the performance, the human belief about performance, or if it results in a likelihood that it is according to the human expectation, it will be related to the process. And if it is about the goal of each of these models, it will be related to the purpose. And then this update will affect, can affect both of these likelihoods, whether human about human belief that the specific model will satisfy contract, and the likelihood that that model will be in the human set of model. We can also model appropriate level of trust. We can say the trust human put on in the robot is appropriate if their belief about or the likelihood that the robot will satisfy the contract is equal to the likelihood that robot actually satisfy the contract. So here is about likelihood that robot actually will satisfy the contract given their model, and this is the random variable associated with the robot actually achieving the contract. And we can also define the human reliance. It is a very simple kind of formulation. It can also capture, we can also capture it with a more complicated conditions. In this, if we consider that decision by the robot, which might be their recommendation or their behavior, satisfying the contract to have a positive utility, and if it fails to have a negative utility, then if the value of human accepting that specific decision is related to the likelihood that a contract will be satisfied into the utility of that decision will actually satisfying and the contract, and the likelihood that it will fail to its utility. And we can also consider some costs for human not accepting the decision by the robot because they have to do the task themselves, or there might be some punishment from their supervisor. Then if the value of accepting is more than value of not accepting, they will accept or will agree with the decision or behavior by the robot and rely on the robot. So for the future work, I'm planning to evaluate this mental model-based theory of trust in seeing how it can infer changes in trust. I'm planning to do different set of human subject study that's to evaluate whether the changes or updating the model of the robot model of human will actually kind of change their trust in the robot. For example, we can make some positive changes or updates in the human model, and so that we can expect increase in trust. And if we saw some negative update in the model, we can see decrease in trust. And apart from this, we can also see whether updating model corresponding to various dimension of trust will cause an update in associated dimension of trust as well. And but for this, we can compare the updates. We can compare the updated that associated with each part of the model and compare it with a trust question that captures different dimension of trust. For my thesis timeline, I'm planning to complete the proposed work by October, and then do the writing from October to November, and then hopefully early November I will defend. And this is my research contributions, and thank you for the reference.
So are there questions from the open session audience? Any questions? I mean, so the way this goes is that there will be questions in the part, and then maybe at the end of the people have questions. Any questions? Any committee members can ask either open or closed sessions up to them.
I can ask a question.
Hi.
Zahra, great job on your talk. So I noticed that you brought up Liancey's definition of trust as an attitude, but then you selected Jacobi's operationalized definition of trust as an expectation to satisfy a contract, right?
Yeah. No, in our work, we also rely on that definition of Reliance, but for like capturing the formulation, we use that construct form.
Got it. Okay. So I'm wondering, just based on those two combined definitions, if you could talk a little bit more about whether or not those definitions and the way that you operationalize them would capture the role of concepts like altruism or reciprocity in developing trusting relationships.
Based on the definition. So I can say that we didn't consider any altruism or reciprocity because especially for reciprocity, we can say because money, like the human is more supervisor of the robot, there won't be any reciprocity that much between them. And for altruism, because it's more toward like doing the task or the kind of specific task is not that much related to altruism. So I can say maybe the definition can capture, or when we develop other decision-making frameworks or we consider other kind of problems, it can actually be expanded into those and consider those aspects as well. But I can say in this current one, and because of the setting, it's not capturing it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the open session? Tony, Siddharth, or should we move to the closed session?
Yeah, I think we can move to the closed session if we don't have any other questions.
Okay, thank you guys, and you should stop the recording. Thank you.
Thank you.